It all started with a twinge. Nothing too concerning at first, just an uncomfortable tightening in my lower belly as I stood in the kitchen, brushing a stray hair behind my ear. I had been making my husband, Jeff, a sandwich before he left for lunch with his family. It wasn't like the cramps were anything new. At 9 months pregnant, I was used to my body acting in bizarre and sometimes painful ways. I hadn't had much time to myself lately, and Jeff's insistence on me staying home for these lunches only made the days drag more. But deep down, I knew that today was different. There was an intensity in the pain that felt almost decisive. My instincts prickled as I leaned against the kitchen counter, one hand resting on my swollen belly. The thing about instincts is that, over the years, I had learned to ignore mine. Jeff had been good at convincing me that my thoughts were irrational, that my worries were exaggerated, and my instincts were flawed. It was always just me when things seemed off in our marriage. He'd play the good husband act, flowers when I felt sad, dinners out after he'd yell, but beneath the surface was a controlling presence that I had grown accustomed to. Today, though, was not the day I could afford to ignore my gut. "Jeff," I called out, my voice trembling more from uncertainty than the discomfort I felt. He was sitting in the living room, scrolling through his phone, his eyes barely flicking up to acknowledge me. "Yeah, babe?" His tone was dismissive, almost bored. "I think I'm in labor," I said, my words slow, deliberate. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, the way he'd leap up, grab my hospital bag, and rush me to the car. The excited, albeit panicked, glint in his eyes as we sped toward the hospital, ready to welcome our first child together. Instead, Jeff furrowed his brow, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was almost noon. "But lunch with my family is in like 15 minutes, he said, standing and smoothing out his shirt. "You're probably just imagining it. They're expecting me there." I blinked, stunned. "Jeff, I'm serious. I think it's time." I tried to maintain calm, though my voice quivered, betraying me. The pain in my stomach was growing, my muscles tensing with each wave. "Look, just lie down for a bit," he muttered, grabbing his keys. "If you're still feeling weird later, call me. I'll come back, but seriously, Claire, it's probably just Braxton Hicks again." He flashed me a dismissive smile, the one I had grown to hate, the one that meant he wasn't taking me seriously. He didn't even look back as he walked out of the front door, leaving me breathless from the pain, frustration bubbling beneath my chest. I watched the door click shut, the faint rumble of his car fading down the street. The pain intensified, and I found myself doubled over on the living room floor, my phone just out of reach on the coffee table. I tried to breathe through it, just like the classes had taught me, but nothing was helping. "I'm alone," I thought, panic setting in. "I'm alone, and I'm in labor." I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Jeff's number. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. The third time, it went straight to voicemail. I felt tears prickling at my eyes, my heart pounding. My body knew this baby wasn't waiting for Jeff to finish his lunch. I needed help, and I needed it now. With shaky fingers, I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a name I hadn't called in years. My old neighbor, Rebecca. She lived 10 minutes away, and maybe, just maybe, she could get here in time. But just as I went to hit call, a sudden, agonizing contraction forced me to my knees, my phone slipping from my grip and skittering across the floor. I groaned, my vision blurring. Just when I thought I couldn't take another second of the pain, I heard the doorbell ring. Twice. Someone was at the door. I gathered the little strength I had left, crawling towards the entryway. Each inch forward felt like a mile, the contractions rolling in waves until I finally reached the door and opened it with a trembling hand. Standing on my doorstep was a stranger. He was wearing a crisp blue suit, his hair slightly windswept, looking very much like he had just come from a business meeting. He looked down at me, concern flooding his face. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, his eyes widening as he took in my state, sweaty, disheveled, and visibly in labor. I could barely form words, my breath hitching. "Please, help!" I managed to gasp. Without hesitation, the man stepped inside, immediately kneeling beside me. Okay, I'm going to help you," he said, his voice steady and calm. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, giving them our address and explaining the situation. "You're going to be all right," he said to me, his voice soft as he reached for my hand. His grip was strong, reassuring. I clung to him, desperate for the sense of stability he offered as another contraction racked my body. He stayed with me, holding my hand, whispering comforting words as we waited for the ambulance. His presence was grounding, his voice a lifeline amidst the chaos and pain. It felt like an eternity, but finally, I heard the wail of sirens approaching. The paramedics arrived, and the man helped them get me onto a stretcher. He stayed by my side all the way to the hospital, even when they tried to usher him out. I don't remember much from that drive, the pain, the fear, it all blurred together. But I remember his hand in mine, his voice telling me I was strong, that I could do this. Hours later, in a sterile hospital room filled with the cries of my newborn son, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Tears streamed down my face as I held my baby close, his tiny body warm against my chest. The stranger, the man who had quite literally saved me, was standing by the door, a soft smile on his face. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I don't even know your name." He stepped closer, his smile growing. "It's Eric," he said. "Eric Dalton." He hesitated, then added, "I'm actually a lawyer." I looked at him, surprised. He seemed almost sheepish, as though embarrassed by the revelation. "A divorce lawyer, actually," he continued. "But today, I'm just glad I could be here to help." A divorce lawyer. The irony was not lost on me. Jeff hadn't even bothered to check his phone. He still hadn't called or shown up. I had been in labor, alone, and the only person who had cared enough to help me was a stranger. Eric must have seen the flicker of emotion on my face because his expression softened. "If you need anything, if you ever need help, just know you have someone in your corner." I nodded, my heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something that felt a lot like hope. It wasn't until a week later, after Jeff finally showed up at the hospital, only to berate me for overreacting, that I truly understood what Eric had offered me. Jeff's words cut deep, his accusations and disregard for what I had gone through solidifying something inside me. I didn't want to live like this anymore, in the shadows of someone who couldn't care less about me. With trembling hands, I found Eric's card tucked in the diaper bag. I dialed his number, my heart pounding in my ears as it rang. "Hello, this is Eric Dalton." His voice was just as calm, just as steady as I remembered. "Eric, it's Claire," I said, my voice shaky but resolute. I think I need your help." There was a pause, and then his voice softened. "I'm here, Claire. Whatever you need, I'm here." The divorce process was anything but simple. Jeff fought me at every turn, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. He couldn't fathom that I, the woman who had always stayed silent, always obeyed, was finally standing up to him. He tried to manipulate me, tried to make me believe I was being irrational. But Eric was always there, guiding me, supporting me, reminding me of my own strength. There were days when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was making a mistake. But then I'd look at my son, his innocent eyes, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I knew I was doing the right thing. I wanted him to grow up in a home filled with love, not fear. I wanted him to see his mother as someone strong, someone who stood up for herself, not someone who cowered in the face of cruelty. Eric became more than just my lawyer. He became my friend. He'd come by the house to check on me, to see how I was doing. He'd bring food, help with the baby, even just sit with me on the days when everything felt overwhelming. He never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. He was just there. And slowly, something began to grow between us. It was subtle at first, a lingering glance, a gentle touch. I found myself looking forward to his visits, to the warmth of his presence. He made me laugh, made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. He made me feel worthy of love. One night, after a particularly difficult day in court, Eric stayed late. We sat on the couch, the baby asleep in his crib, the weight of the day pressing down on us. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel what had been growing inside me for months. "Eric," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He turned to me, his eyes soft, questioning. "Yeah?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "Thank you for everything. I don't think I'd have made it through this without you." He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. You're stronger than you think, Claire. You've always been strong. I've just been here to remind you. I leaned in, my lips brushing against his, a tentative, gentle kiss. He didn't pull away. Instead, he cupped my face in his hands, deepening the kiss, his touch tender, reverent. It wasn't the desperate, needy kiss of a man trying to take something from me. It was the kiss of a man who wanted to give, who wanted to heal. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Months passed and the divorce was finalized. I walked out of that courthouse with my head held high, my son in my arms, and Eric by my side. Jeff glared at me from across the parking lot, his face twisted in anger, but I didn't care. He no longer had any power over me. I had found my strength. I had found my voice. And against all odds, I had found love. Eric and I took things slow. He never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. He was patient, understanding, always putting my needs, and my son's needs, first. He loved me, but more importantly, he respected me. He saw me as an equal, not as someone to control or belittle. One evening, as we sat on the porch, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink, Eric turned to me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. "Claire," he said, his voice soft, "I know it's been a long road, and I know you're still healing, but I want you to know. I love you, and I will love your son as if he were my own. I want to be here for both of you, for as long as you'll have me." Tears filled my eyes as I looked at him, my heart swelling with a mixture of emotions, gratitude, love, hope. I reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "We're not going anywhere," I whispered. "We're here, and we love you too." And in that moment, I knew I had found my home, not in a place or in the walls of a house, but in the arms of the man who had saved me, who had helped me find myself again. Life isn't always fair. It isn't always easy. But sometimes, in the most unexpected of places, you find exactly what you need. You find hope, you find strength, and if you're lucky, you find love. And that's exactly what I found on the day a stranger helped me give birth, and turned out to be not just a divorce lawyer, but the person who helped me reclaim my life, a person who helped me find me.